George Orwell's 1984. So much of this novel is spent more on the world building in the society and the surveillance state of the country of Oceania rather than the plot. People in this book live in a totalitarian regime where history is repeatedly rewritten, where love for another human is punishable, where even thinking of something that goes against the government is punishable by death. In this world, there are three classes of people. Those at the top are the inner party members, they're important government officials. Then there's the outer party members who are lesser government employees, and the rest are the proletariat, the common folk whose way of life is closer to that of what society was like before, where there was more of a middle class before the current government came to be. Party members are surveillanced by telescreens, which are in houses and streets and parks, where a party member is presumably watching and looking for anything suspicious, such as someone looking doubtful, someone writing in a book, someone speaking to one another. They are looking for people who commit what is called a thought crime, which is thinking anything that's not conducive to the carrying out of the regime's principles and their goal. The face of this government is Big Brother, who is not an actual person, but a human representation of the all-powerful inner party who is always watching you. The book takes place in London, in Airstrip 1, in the giant country of Oceania, which consists of America and Northern Europe. The government school of thought is called INCSOC, which means English Socialism. Here, war is peace. The three world powers are constantly at war, and most funding goes towards the war, and all scientific research is for the creation of weapons. This hyperfixation on war keeps people repressed, it creates excuses for the lack of commercial goods, and is a catalyst for people to hate foreigners and to trust only in their country's ideals. Because the funding of war keeps people insular and therefore not empowered to rebel against the government, war is technically peace. That's why war is peace. Another slogan is ignorance is strength. Books are censored, history has been rewritten to make Oceania always seem to be the winner and the righteous nation. If any major update in the news happens, for example, if chocolate is promised to never be rationed and then a week later it is rationed, all previous news reportings for the promise are erased, so the government can never be caught in the false promise. No loyalty exists between families. Children are very zealously in belief of INCSOC and will report their parents to be vaporized if they suspect them of a crime. Vaporization means one is tortured until they are brainwashed to be loyal to the party so they do not die a martyr, and then they are killed, then all records of their existence are erased, so it is as if they are never existed. And there's one passage of the book that I think highlights the society very well. I will read it. Okay. When once you were in the grip of the party, what you felt or did not feel, what you did or refrained from doing, made literally no difference. Whatever happened to you vanished, and neither you nor your actions were ever heard of again. You were lifted clean out of the stream of history, and yet to have the people of only 2 generations ago, this would not have seemed all important, because they were not attempting to alter history. They were governed by private loyalties which they did not question. What mattered were individual relationships, and a completely helpless gesture, an embrace, a tear, a word spoken to a dying man could have value in itself. The proles, or proletariat, it suddenly occurred to him, had remained in this condition. They were not loyal to a party or a country or an ideal. They were loyal to one another. For the first time in his life, he did not despise the proles, or think of them merely as an inert force, which would one day spring to life and regenerate the world. The proles had stayed human. They had not become hardened inside. They had held on to the primitive emotions which he himself had to relearn by conscious effort. And in thinking this, he remembered, without apparent relevance, how a few weeks ago he had seen a severed hand lying on the pavement and had kicked it into the gutter as though it had been a cabbage stalk. So you can see he's very desensitized to violence, and he's sort of complicit in the party's carrying out of this violence. So onto the plot. The plot is sort of secondary to the world building here. So with the plot, the book concerns a man named Winston Smith, a 39-year-old man married to a plain woman who is barely ever mentioned in the book. He works in the Ministry of Truth, which is a section of the government whose job is to create lies by rewriting history, to produce books that keep people dumb and unquestioning. All things get tossed into a memory hole, which destroys all evidence of the thing, whatever it may be, the paper. Winston's job was to censor old newspapers to make it seem like all of the party's predictions were true, and that all they have had in the past are victories. Winston, of course, does not believe in the party and sees through their power-hungry sham. He begins to write a diary which is forbidden. Winston notices a dark-haired woman who he eventually has a romantic affair with. They go into a private room alone in an antique store and talk in private there. They share a contempt for their world and commit a crime by having sex for pleasure instead of having sex only for the sake of the party, for basically the procreation of other little party loyalists. They also come into contact with a man named O'Brien, who leads a resistance cause and gives them a black book spelling out the true insidious nature of Ingsoc. Julia and Winston get captured and arrested about 2/3 into the book, and I'll stop there for the summary, because I don't want to give anything major away. So for my feelings for this book, I found it to be very bone-chilling. I could imagine a filthy, concrete, and metallic hell where love is dead and loyalty lies only to a political party who views you as a pawn who will dispense your life without a thought if they so choose to. I can imagine the rows of people marching in step in military uniforms down a wide road flanked by dull buildings, the prisoners from Asia, either in the countries of Eurasia or East Asia, as opposed to Oceania, being rolled down with the scrunched up faces flanking them, screaming vitriol at them. I can imagine the 2 minutes hate, where 2 minutes, for 2 minutes people are shown anti-Eurasian propaganda and anti-resistance propaganda and are allowed to release their hate onto the screen. Orwell did a magnificent job at creating the setting, creating the bone-chilling sense of always being watched, of being used, of knowing you will die the same way you were born, ignorant and in drudgery. Clearly, this book was inspired by World War II and the rise of both fascism and communism around the world. And this book is like as if fascism and communism had a baby, and they put that baby on steroids. It is dystopian science fiction, but it feels so real because it could be real. And that is where the book's worth lies, in its criticism of both the far right and the far left ideologies. In terms of the plot, near the end, there was some shocking turn of events that I won't give away. The plot does come secondary to the world building, and the world building is actually worth the ride because it is so detailed. It makes so much sense that it is scary. One can easily imagine the world delving into this society. I gave this book 4 stars, 1 star less than 5 stars, due to how it did sort of slog along in some parts, but 4 well-earned stars due to the convincing and skin-crawling nature of it all. So that's my review of this classic. I did not read this in high school. I think a lot of people read this in high school. I did not, though. So I finally got a chance to read it, and I'm glad I did. And stay tuned for the next video, and thank you for watching. Bye.